Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello dear students, welcome to another lecture. In this class we are going to continue with chapter 8 of class 11th literature reader Nagaland Board, The Hunger for Books. Now this, as we all know, is a story about a Nobel Prize winner. Now, as we have already read in the previous class, the previous pages of this chapter, that talks about how Doris Lessing, shared her experiences of a school where there was nothing but dusty classrooms. Even the teacher would keep the chalks in his pocket so that it would not get stolen. But the people would beg, literally beg for books to come their way. Then she also shared how all the previous Nobel Prize winners like B.S. Naipaul, John Coetzee, each one of them had a hard time getting literacy in the first place, forget about becoming a writer or getting the Nobel Prize at the end of it. She then talked about how her organization aimed at supplying the books into such villages and that she got help from Norway and Sweden. And she also shared the experience where the people, where there was no petrol altogether, actually greeted the books with tears, So now we are going to continue with the chapter and we shall see how, and what else she has to add on to her expert opinions about the knowledge or the hunger for the books and literacy that the people had. She says, here I am talking about books never written, writers who could not make it because the publishers are not there, voices unheard. It is not possible to estimate this great waste of talent or potential. But even before that stage of a book's creation which demands a publisher, an advance, encouragement, there is something else which is lacking. So she says that right now I have not even talked about those books which could never be written. Apart from the books that we can read, that we can see coming up in the market, apart from the writers that we hear about, there are so many books which could never be published. There are so many writers who could never get themselves published. There are so many voices, that is, there are so many opinions that one could not hear. And it is not possible how much talent is getting wasted because of this. She says that even before the stage of a book's creation, which demands a publisher, when you plan to write a book, you need to have a publisher, you need to have some advance, you need to have encouragement. But other than that, there is something else which is required for one to become a writer, and that is missing. She says we are a jaded lot. We in our world are threatened world. We are good for irony and even cynicism. Some words and ideas we hardly use or, are so worn out have become very worn out. So what does she say? She says that we are very jaded right now, We are jaded. As it is written in your vocabulary, it says people who are very tired and bored. So she says that the generation that we are a part of, we are a jaded lot. We are people who become very tired and we live in a world which is threatened, which is always in one or the other fear circling it. We are good for irony and even cynicism. Now, cynicism basically means, that human expression, that human feeling where people are motivated only for themselves and they don't trust the human society, they don't trust in integrity, but just in themselves they have that complete faith. So she says that we belong to such a strata of the society or to such a time where we are good for irony. We can accept things which are ironical in nature, that is, those things which we did not expect to happen. We even are self-motivated. There are some words or some ideas that we hardly use. And these words and ideas have become worn out. These have become old, shattered, destroyed. But we may want to restore some words that have lost their potency. She says that out of those words, out of those ideas, those expressions that have been lost, there certainly are a few that we would want to get back, that we would want to have back, because they might have lost their potency, they might have lost their value, but they are important and they need to be renewed. We have a treasure house of literature. Going back to the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, it is all there. This wealth of literature to be discovered again and again by whoever is lucky enough to come up on it. Suppose it did not exist. How impoverished, how empty. So she says that we have a treasure house of literature. We around us are lucky, are fortunate to have this treasure house of literature. And when we go back into the time of Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, it was all there at that times as well. This wealth of literature, and we ought to discover it again. Whosoever is able to, one should just get back into the history and try to get into picture the beautiful history that we have been empowered with. Suppose it did not exist, she says. How impoverished and how empty we would be. Impoverished means poor. If this literature did not exist, we would have been very poor and empty within us. But we are very lucky, we are fortunate that we have this rich literature all around us. And she wants us to make use of it. She wants us to use it to the fullest and for the betterment of each and every one. We have a bequest of stories, tales from the old storytellers, some of whose names we know, but some we don't. The storytellers go back and back to a clearing in the forest where a great fire burns and the old shamans dance and sing. For our heritage of stories began in fire, magic, the spirit world, and that is where it is held today. She says that we have bequest of stories. Bequest of stories means we have inherited our stories from tales which were there ages ago. There were storytellers. Some storytellers' names are known to us, some are unknown to us. Some storytellers, they go back, to the history. Some are about the fire, some are about the forest, and the old shamans also. Shamans are those witch doctors who would actually cure a person's illness by calling spirits. So we have stories about shamans, we have stories about our heritage, about our culture. And everything began in fire, everything was about magic, everything was about spirit. And that is where it is held today. It is equally magical. We simply need to explore that and bring that outside. Ask any modern storyteller and they will say, there is always a moment when they are touched with fire, with what we like to call inspiration. And this goes back and back to the beginning of our race, to fire and ice and the great winds that shaped us and our world. So she says that ask any of the modern storyteller, and one thing that every storyteller would always tell you is that when they decide to write, there are moments when they are touched by some fire. There is another level of motivation and inspiration that comes in them. And then it continues to go back and forth. It does not remain with them throughout, but it continues to travel. This fire and ice and all these great winds, that means the great inspiration, is what has shaped us as well as the world. It is only because of this fire, the inspiration, that made the storytellers write. And it is because of their stories that we have inherited all the wonderful things and the world has moved ahead. The storyteller is deep inside every one of us. The story maker is always with us. Let us suppose our world is attacked by war, by the horrors that we all of us easily imagine. Let us suppose floods wash through our cities, the seas rise, but the storyteller will be there. For it is our imaginations which shape us, keep us, create us for good and for ill. It is our stories that will recreate us when we are torn, hurt, even destroyed. It is the storyteller, the dream maker, the myth maker that is our phoenix. That represents us at our best and our most creative. She says that there is a storyteller deep inside each one of us. Everyone can tell a story, but the story maker is always with us. Story maker means the art of making a story. So the art of telling a story and the art of making a story are two different things. So she says that the story maker is always with us, but the storyteller is deep inside us. She gives us an example, a hypothetical example, where she wants us to assume that there is a war. And war is obviously a horrible phenomenon. We all understand the fears, the scare, the timidity attached with it. So she says that suppose that there is flood that is seen everywhere across the cities, the seas rise. But even then the storyteller will remain with us. Because it is our imagination that shapes us. It creates us for both good and for ill. Be it good or bad. Whatever is there, whatever happens is all in our imagination. It is our stories that will always recreate us, that are going to recreate, that are going to refurbish us. And when we are torn aside, when our stories die down, everything is destroyed. It is the storyteller that makes us to dream big. It is the myth maker. Myth maker means it is somebody who imagines and creates. That is our phoenix. We all know that phoenix is used for a bird. So the writer says that the storyteller deep inside us is going to act as our phoenix. That will represent as our best, that will motivate us to keep on striving ahead, to keep on, imagining more and to continue being more creative. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this beautiful essay which was written by Doris Lessing. So Doris Lessing, who was a Nobel Prize winner in 2007, talked about the importance and the hunger of books that existed in people. Particularly, she talked about Zimbabwe, the rural Zimbabwe, and she took multiple examples to showcase how the people there were very educated, they were very intellectual and smart and intelligent, but they did not have the appropriate resources. The books were missing, because of which they could not read and write. And when she and her organization ended up supplying to them, providing to them the required amount of books, they actually established for themselves a library beneath the shade of the tree. There were people who started writing a novel in the Tonga language, believing that there wasn't anything that was written in that language. She also mentioned about the great Nobel Prize winners and their speech and how they faced the equal amount of difficulties in life. But the only thing that pushed them, that motivated them, that inspired them was their zeal, their hunger to learn, to read, to write. This is how they could achieve what they had been. She talked about how there is a storyteller that is present in each one of us. And it is this storyteller that, always surprises us and supports us in the hardest of circumstances. At the end, the writer basically requests each one of us to never let the storyteller die. Because she believes that, it is the storyteller only that is going to help us and supply to us and provide us whatever is needed in the most difficult circumstances. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this beautiful essay. Let us discuss the back exercises now. Okay. What is the reaction of idealistic teachers to schools in Zimbabwe? As we have read, we talked about two idealistic teachers, one who came from London and the other who came from England. Both of them were highly shocked and surprised when they saw the condition of schools. The rooms were dusty, no library existed, there were no books, they would keep the chalks in their pockets lest it would get stolen. And they were surprised to see how the people begged them to supply them books from London or from their country. It is not possible to estimate this great waste of talent, of potential. What talent and waste is being described here? The talent and the waste that writer describes here is of those people who have the capability of writing, who want to get published, but somehow they are not able to get themselves or their work published, and therefore their opinions are always unknown. Their opinions never come to the front. Their opinions are never known to anyone else. The next question says, what determines the popularity of books in Zimbabwe? Name two popular books that the author mentioned. So, what determines the popularity of books? The books became popular in Zimbabwe only because of their availability. If they were available, they became popular. If they were not available, nobody knew about them. And the two books that became popular, one was Animal Farms and the other one, The Mayor of Casterbridge. So these are the two books, Animal Farm and The Mayor of Casterbridge, which became very popular in Zimbabwe just because they were available. What are some of the problems in getting books to the interior regions of Zimbabwe? So what were the problems that the writer faced in supplying the books to the interior regions of Zimbabwe? The extreme scarcity, shortage of petrol. Is the reaction of the people worth it? However, once the book reached, yes indeed, reaction of the people, if you remember, I have told you, they received the books with tears in their eyes. So that reaction of the people was certainly worth it. What is Lessing's opinion of the government? Now, according to Lessing, she has talked about the fact that it is not the government, she says that every country should get the kind of government that the people deserve. And that is why she mentioned that was not so with Zimbabwe, because they had the hunger for books and they deserved a similar government. But unfortunately, there was. What is the importance of storytellers in a war-ravaged world? So in the last paragraph where Lessing has talked about the importance of storytellers, she says that these storytellers are very important because it is this creativity, the zeal, the enthusiasm that these storytellers have that keep the creative front of everything going on. They keep everything working and they provide one with a wider perspective of everything that is taking place. What is the great tradition Lessing talks about, and write a brief note. So what tradition did Lessing talk about? If you remember, she talked about, V.S. Naipaul, and before that she also talked about Pamuk, the two people who received the Nobel Prizes prior to her, and they mentioned that whenever they began writing, they were both encouraged by their fathers to take up writing, and when they started writing, they were connected to their roots, where Pamuk was connected to the Vedas, B.S. Naipaul was connected to the Vedas, the Indian Vedas. So everybody, each writer was very much connected to the tradition, to the roots, and that acted as a motivating power, as a striving power that pushed them to continue finding more about their traditions, exploring more about their traditions, and then writing more as well. How did ancient storytellers communicate their stories? Ancient storytellers, we've read that they would communicate their stories through trees, through magic, through shamans, through the winds, through the forest. And how has that changed in the modern era? According to the writer, there has not been much change in the modern era, because if you remember, she has very clearly stated that now we are going back. The modern era is again heading back towards where we started from. Find the meanings of the words from the passage and make their sentences. So all these words we have discussed when we were reading the chapter. Wrested is something which is forcibly taken out. The books were taken out, were wrested out of the dumps, if you remember. Bequest is something that we inherit from our ancestors. So these books are a bequest from my grandfather. Phenomenon is something which is followed widely. Climatic change is a current phenomenon. Discarded, something which is wasted. The discarded books, the discarded encyclopedia is what the writer used to learn from. Impoverished is poor. The impoverished condition of Zimbabwe did not stop it from reading books. Heritage, again, our rich culture. So it is the Indian heritage that forced many writers to explore it and write about it. Sparse is scattered. India is a place of grit and gravel with the bushes sparse all around, scattered all around. Phoenix is the guiding bird. So in the war time, the books act as a phoenix for the storytellers. Now the next part is where you have to use your own opinions, your own ideas to write the answers to these two questions. So you have to find the speech of some other Nobel laureate and you have to share it with the class, and you also have to write a book review of your favorite